Hi YouTube and happy Monday. Welcome back to the cats slash bikes slash computers slash music channel. Tonight I want to talk a little bit about the Kenbak-1, which I don't need to tell you, AI can tell us, is a computer that is widely considered to be the world's first personal computer. I want to talk about this for a number of reasons. In a recent YouTube video, I used the digital 2U shown here to add two 8-bit numbers with carry. I made that video to celebrate my 256 video, and I'd like to port this code to a physical hardware emulator of the original Kenbak-1 called the Nano Kenbak that I also have and I've reviewed a long time in the past for YouTube, I think in 2021 or 2022. You can see it right here. It is much like the Digital 2U. It is a cute little thin printed circuit board in the shape of this very first personal computer. And I can't wait to add two 8-bit numbers with carry and show you the code that I write to do that. So stay tuned for that video coming up in the near future. Before I did that though, I wanted to give some background on the Kenbak-1. And just to give a few more previews before I do that, I've also come across something called the Cardiac Computer, the Cardboard Illustrative Aid to Computation. That's a paper computer, and I'm planning to do a video series on that as well. Maybe I'll port the same source code for the Digital 2U and Kenbak-1 to that computer. I'm planning to make it and laminate it, but before I do that, I'll give a little overview of the Cardiac just as I am about the Kenbak now, and just show you even the printed sheets before I cut them out to make that computer. The Kenbak-1's truly interesting because it preceded computers like the Altair 8800 and IMSEI 8080 that I think are a lot more famous. We've probably all watched war games, and we probably all wish we had an IMSEI 8080, a can of tab, a acoustic coupler, and some fun military supercomputers to dial into. The Kenbak-1 preceded the IMSEI 8080 even. It was designed and built by John Blankenbaker, hence the name. Kenbak, you can see, is within Blankenbaker, in 1971. As far as I know, it was a serial-based processor and not a single microprocessor like the Intel 4004 or 8088 or such. It was a processor built out of TTL digital logic chips, smaller chips, as opposed to a single microprocessor chip. It featured 256 bytes of memory, a 1 megahertz speed, and toggle switches for programming, much like the IMSEI 8080 and the Altair 8800. And as AI tells us, AI said it must be true. The Kenbak-1 was designed before microprocessors were invented. Very sadly, it was first sold in early 1971, but due to marketing issues, funding issues, engineering challenges, the Kenbak Corporation folded in 1973, and there are only 40 computers. I have a page I'll show you in a little bit that I believe is called Kenbak Registry that shows where those 40 computers are today. It was mainly designed and used for educational purposes. I know there was some interest in marketing it to hobbyists, but I guess cost or distribution or just advancement of technology or all those things had limited its acquisition by hobbyists. It's as I mentioned, it's considered the world's first personal computer by the Computer History Museum, Computer Museum of America, and American Computer Museum. I'm pretty sure the second of these is in Roswell, Georgia. It's in the Atlanta area, and I've been there before. It has a very interesting chart and opcode definition that's quite different from what I've seen with the Digital 2U. And John Blankenbaker is still around. I believe he recently turned 92 or 93. I think he lives in Pennsylvania. And he kept the prototype until 2015. I believe he sold it to Achim Bauquet, who runs most of the websites I'll show you next. Okay, so I'm going to go through a few websites and then the documentation that I have for the Kenbak. Just I'll not take up too much time. This is a page from the Computer History Museum, and it shows you what the Kenbak-1 looked like. I always thought this design was very cool. I mean, you saw the replica I had, but I hadn't yet shown you the real thing. So this is the real thing. Contained a printed circuit board and power supply all enclosed within this blue metal box with a white metal plate in front, 8 different LEDs organized in octal, not in hexadecimal or in binary. I guess I mean octal and hexadecimal, but both the data and addresses were listed in octal, which is pretty interesting. And I'll make a point of emphasizing that in my Kenbak demo. There are different toggle switches you could press to set these lights on and off for address or data buses. Remember, 256 bytes of memory, and you can pick particular locations within that through 8 toggle switches, and then a number of different control switches to go between run and data entry modes, advancing through memory, and so on. The Kenbak-1 won the Computer Museum's earliest PC contest. It used this is what I was trying to remember. Small and medium scale integrated circuits in order to build a processor, as opposed to a single large scale or a very large scale integrated circuit, like say the Intel 8080. It had switches and lights for input output and 256 bytes of memory. Here's John Blankenbaker with his computer. You can see it's pretty big. It looks like it's about 2.5 feet long or so, and maybe about a foot deep. This is John with the Kenbak-1 back in 1971. What's interesting is I would have guessed something like the Data Point 2200 or the Altair 8800 was the first personal computer with a microprocessor, but that award went to the Micral, I believe it's French. Yes, designed in France. That was built in 1973, which used the Intel 8088. Blankenbaker was the only employee of Kenbak Corporation for most of its 3-year life, and he, much like Apple, he ran the company in his garage. And in addition to designing and building the computer, he wrote up a reference manual all himself, a theory of operation manual, and a 150-page lab exercise book, all of which I have in PDF format. And these are all really nice. I'll go through more depth of the not theory of operation. That's not what I want to go to. The programming reference. This is just incredibly nicely organized and well written. And just what I want to show here that I'll get to more in a little bit is that there's incredibly interesting organization of opcodes where you can just think about which digit within the particular byte encodes the operation, and then what registers acted upon and what type of memory addressing. So you can think, as opposed to just somehow organizing a bunch of opcodes sequentially as different hexadecimal two-digit hexadecimal numbers. It's more of a now you're going to say I'm not really understanding what I'm looking at. A 3 octal digit encoding of different opcodes that you can enter into memory to program the Kenbak. Super cool. Okay, so I'll come back to that later. There was a Kenbak advertisement. It was Oh, that's an interesting point. So I had forgotten that the Altair 8800 was a kit. The Kenbak-1 was a working computer. I wonder if $750 was relatively expensive for the time. That may have limited sales. I know a lot of them were sold to schools and to community colleges. And then down here, stuff on the Micral and other early computers like the Skelby 8B and EPA Micro 68. Okay. Um, Here's just the Wikipedia page. Less than 50 were built, 14 machines known to exist worldwide currently. After Kenbak failed, it was taken over by CTI Education Projects. They renamed it the 5050, but still weren't able to say anymore. Just some more detail on the CPU. It did not have a one-chip CPU, but as I mentioned, instead it was purely based on small-scale TTL chips. The 8-bit machine had 256 bytes of memory, and this is what I was trying to remember, that relied on Intel's Type 1404A silicon gate MOS shift registers. 1 megahertz, I think, for the time was pretty decent. I mean, I have programmable calculators that I'll talk about in future videos. I really need to do a HP15C review. I need to do a TI-66. Let's just pull something else out of my desk. This TI-66 that I'll show you here, I'm pretty sure has a 200 kilohertz processor. This is, I love this calculator, but it's definitely not the fastest. Its batteries are still good after 2 years though. Anyway, so this Kenbak-1 was 1 megahertz, and I mean, thinking back to the early Apple IIs and Commodore 64, I think, that was, they had a pretty similar speed. Here's a nicer view of the Kenbak-1. You can see the lights and the keys really more than toggle switches on the front. It's interesting how they're kind of not aligned. And then you also see this nice helpful guide to convert from octal codes into binary as well as hexadecimal, though the opcodes were octal. I talked a little bit about the buttons on the right, but there's a input clear button, address control, display and set, memory read and storage, and then start and stop running, as well as, of course, a power switch. I definitely should pull out this Kenbak IDE. It looks like this runs in Linux. That will be great for a behind the scenes video once I get that 8-bit number edition with carry video recorded. I also need to do a similar one on the Digital 2U simulators. Yes, the Kenbak-1 is a serial computer. It processes a single bit at a time. It has 4 main registers at the beginning of those 256 bytes of memory, A, B, index, and then the program counter. Flags when operations are done in A, B, or X, including overflow and carry, are in, I believe, 200 through 202. We'll get to that later. And then there's also input and output registers. All registers are memory mapped. The 3 general purpose registers are A, B, and X. A is the implicit destination of some operations. X, which is, that's very interesting. The index register turns direct and indirect addressing into index direct and indexed indirect modes. There's also the program counter called register P and everything I talked about. Add, subtract, load, store, load complement, and OR. That's 7 operations, have 5 different addressing modes. There's immediate, act right on what's in the second byte of the instruction. Add some literal to A. Add literal to a particular byte. Add a literal to a byte stored in a byte. And then indexed, where you take the second byte and then add that to whatever's in X. That's the whole idea of indexing. That in the index you might have some position, and then the operand you add to X to form the address. And then indirect indexed is the same thing, but the byte in that register is a pointer telling you where the next byte should be acted upon. This is interesting. So I had, talked about that encoding of octal digits into particular operations. Instructions are, are bytes. They're coded in 8 bits. The second and third bytes provide operands. But what's very interesting is that there's, a matrix like I showed you in the programming reference, telling that converts from particular octal digits to a particular operation. And this isn't, just ordered randomly or just ordered sequentially. There's particular octal digits like 00, and then 3 through 7, is going to be an add A to some destination operation, whereas 1 0 and then 3 through 7 was add B. So that's pretty interesting. I mean, I think the digital 2U, I have it with me, so I'll look on the back. It might have something similar, but I don't recall that. No, that doesn't seem like quite the same architecture. I mean, I have it right on the back of the digital here. I'll stick that back in its case. But it's just interesting just how different that feels from the digital 2U architecture. And if I knew of more personal computers and mainframes and so on, I could draw more insightful parallels. For example, I've recently heard that the TMS 7000 is very much like the PDP 11 as far as assembly language programming. And I'm sure that's not accidental, but I don't know enough and I haven't been around long enough to understand, why that would have been. I mean, I'm sure it's that the developers of that processor had used the PDP-11 extensively. Okay, so I'll just scroll through this. Nothing too exciting there. Other similar types of computers. DAB 2200 I had heard about. Mark 8, I didn't know too much about that. I knew it had an Intel 8088. Everybody knows about the Altair 8800. The Gigatron, I guess that's kind of cool. A modern TTL chip-based CPU. Okay, so a great website for all kinds of very in-depth information about the Kenbak computer is Kenbak.com. I believe it's Achim Baquet who developed it. Let's see. So there's some more detail about what the Kenbak was used for. It was used mainly educationally. As it mentions here, there were Kenbak computers sold to a private girls' school in Hawaii, boys' school, a high school, schools in other countries, as well as community colleges. I can really see how this would be used in a community college at the time to teach microprocessor architecture and the basics of computing at the time. I mean, I think it's sort of lost today, how much effort was put into running not running, optimizing a program to solve a particular problem in extremely limited storage space. I mean, 256 bytes. You could. Well, the joke is, you could land the moon with, or land a spaceship on the moon with less processing power than it takes me to open open a window in Firefox or Chrome. Okay. Very quickly, you or your family or students can write programs of fun and interest. Okay, so I talked about all this already. There's a counting program that, I could even do a video where I enter this in. Again, it was all built up, and you can get into the gory detail here of digital logic integrated together to create a state machine, arithmetic logic unit, and memory. Again, it's serial memory, and that's sort of interesting. There's an online emulator. My particular Nano Kenbak I got from Add Water and Stir, run by Chris Davis. He also has really nice larger emulators like the micro Kenbak and the full-size Kenbak emulator, and these also have serial input output, so you can upload code from, say, a Linux machine, whereas the Nano Kenbak doesn't. Chris Davis had located the original Bud Industries Grand Prix case specifications. I guess that's the name for that really iconic blue metal case, so you can make authentic cases for these reproductions. So this is the really interesting part. Multiple people created Kenbak kits that were faithful to the original, that don't use a microcontroller, that use entirely TTL logic. I just want to show you how expensive one of these are. I mean, not to complain about that, but it's just how interesting it is. Artem Kalinchuk has produced a Kenbak-1 kit with PC board parts and case. Let's go to that page. That's $650. That's incredible. I guess uh, inflation's a thing, so I can't compare this with $750 in 1971. But again, with thanks to microcontrollers and VLSIs now, you can do all of this in pennies on the dollar compared with building a full scale reproduction. But there's a lot more you can gain from building this all up yourself, and I'm sure there might be people watching who would like to build a full scale Kenbak from scratch. Yeah, I don't think you're going to want to go for an original Kenbak-1. Those, I think, Achim Bakay or another collector had spent $40,000 on one, so that's probably not going to be feasible. Certainly, I'm not um, on the market for a original Kenbak-1. But I'll show you in the Kenbak registry for the originals that have been found. There's an inventory here of where these are located. Someone in Tennessee who wants to remain anonymous. That's fun. Now they're sold by CTI. Oh, this is sad. Main computer museum closed. Eric Klein, who I think I know on Facebook. And in the registry, you can see John Blankenbaker with his prototype that I believe he sold to Achim Bakay, who I think is in the Kenbak Facebook group that I happen to run. There's John with the Kenbak. Oh, that's awesome. If any autograph, I would want his on a Kenbak. I believe he gave a talk at VCF East. I'll have to add that to the description, but I remember that was quite exciting. Look at that mess of traces and wires. I mean, another thing here is you can think, like, if one of those traces gets scratched or the wire gets ripped out, it's a lot more work that you don't have to do with a microcontroller. That, I mean, I don't know how many AT Mega 328s we step on or split into different pieces, but those wires are a little smaller. The switches, oh, this is so delicious looking at this here. Fan and everything. Look at that coil on that fan. Yeah, I bet that thing got hot. And very old, oily, papery transformers on that power supply. Okay, so that's kind of cool. You can see for the 14 or so known 15 Kenbak-1s what they look like and where they are. You can see this one has a CTI logo as CTI Education Products bought out Kenbak. At www.kenbak-1.net, you can see the original website that John Blankenbaker created about the Kenbak-1 computer. In 2022, he gave permission to Achim Bakay to preserve his legacy, and Achim has visited John several times in Vermont, in addition to owning the only prototype of the Kenbak-1. Even more websites here. Wow, that's, you even get a red key on this one. It's nice, how much is all preserved on the web here. Let's see if there's anything else I want to go through. As I've already talked about this for 25 minutes. You can tell how much I like this thing. Okay. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all the websites. I just want to briefly show you the programming reference from beginning to end. It goes through the memory addressing, locations of the different registers. It was 2.1 through 2.03 for overflow and carry from the A through A, B, and X registers. Input in 377 and output in 200. So I wouldn't write programs to interfere there. Different number representations and how you can encode all positive integers versus signed integers or fractional numbers. Different addressing modes we talked about. A lot of this coding for particular addition instructions, which again is very different from what I remember looking through the digital 2U architecture. And I just need to learn a lot more assembly language and machine language for different architectures in order to have a very insightful comparison. I remember doing some for the Z80 back in the day, definitely for the Cosmac Alpha. I have a video on that. I built a replica of that as well. So the RCA 1802, maybe the 65502 as well, the MOS 6502, but I don't recall that quite so well. Logical products here. Logical complement. This, I'm trying to remember, the A register is loaded with the arithmetic complement, the value obtained by subtracting from 0 of the operand. Jump and mark, I'm trying to remember what mark was. Jump direct, jump indirect, again, jump to an address or an address stored at an address. Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh yes, in the jump and mark instructions, the value p plus 2 is stored in the target address prior to executing the instruction in the location following. So mark meaning put a value in that particular location. Skip on 0 and set 1. So you get some conditionals here. Left and right shift, no operation, halt, that we remember from the digital rule. There's really nice overview of the symbolic representation of instructions and operands, how you can build up register operations out of those previous operations that I went through. How to do input and output, table, produce a table lookup, yep, relative operand addressing. Let's see, the console data flow, I'd have to, go, I haven't read in depth through this section, but let's see, so data information into 377, set clear data setting address registers or setting what's in memory, how these interact with lamps, and again, I already looked at it, but I have to remember whether 377 was input and 200 was output. Should I guess I thought? Yeah, so yes, I thought 377 was input. So just the little flow chart here of how console input and output go. And then a little more information, examples of console use. Maybe I'll go ahead and try this. I think this is the program that that counts numbers in binary. And this table that tells you based on the first octal digits what instruction you have and what subset, what Oh wow. What instruction or what operation and what registers or types of addresses that are targeted. Little lookup table here for your operations. I think I've even seen some demo programs for this. They're very cool because they will create an instruction within the program. They'll add particular values to a byte that change what the instruction is. I think that's called generative programming or generative algorithm. Let me check generative programming. Yes, yes, some mechanism generates a computer program to allow human programmers to write code at a higher abstraction level. Yeah, so that idea in extremely low level form. Okay, and with that 30 minutes of talking and going through all this information, I conclude the video. I hope this was helpful and interesting to you. I'll post multiple links on the Kenbak-1 in the description. Please like and subscribe as always. And if you have any thoughts about the Kenbak or experiences, leave them in the comments down below. Have a great evening and a great start to your week.